Hey friends, welcome to your week 14 foundations class. For today, you will need a rolled up towel or blanket or pillowcase. Alternatively, you could use a yoga block, and you'll need some sort of ball. We're gonna release our low backs. This is a special tune-up fitness one, but you could also use a tennis ball. Lacrosse ball would be a little bit hard, but just find what you need or what you can. So we're gonna chat a bit about breathing and posture and hamstrings today. Let's revisit the importance of 360-degree breathing. So what that means is a lot of times lately, you'll just hear belly breath, like especially in the yoga world or like the meditation world, just breathe into your belly, just breathe into your belly. This is definitely a short-sighted view. The intention is there. The intention is to activate our parasympathetic nervous system, to get away from breathing into our neck muscles. That is all well and good. However, if you only breathe into your belly, over time, your front abdominal muscles will stretch out and they'll be less effective. So when they're stretched out, they don't have a good force, tension, length relationship. And they're just kind of stretched out and ineffective, which happens anyways in pregnancy, but we can mitigate some of that with a better breathing pattern. It can also put excess pressure down on your pelvic floor. Basically, if you're not taking a full breath, pressure goes where the area of least resistance is. So that can be through your diastasis, through the midline of your abs. It can be down into your pelvic floor. So it's really important that we get a full expansive breath. Also, your, well, we'll talk about that in the posture section. So what a 360-degree breath is you are breathing down into your belly, but you're also breathing into the back body, which is honestly really difficult and takes a lot of practice, a lot of mind-muscle connection. We will release our low backs a little bit to help with that. It's breathing out into your ribs. This is where your lungs actually sit. So of course, if we take in air, our lungs are gonna fill up like balloons, and they like to move more so in this outward bucket handle type movement, as opposed to just having front rib flare. But I also really like thinking about breathing into the back of my ribs to even it out. Even if it doesn't feel like you're making a lot of progress there, just the intention and the practice, I bet you'll get a little bit. And it's breathing into our chest and our collarbones, filling up the top of the lung space as well. Your lungs are big organs, but what we don't want to do is breathe into our shoulders and our necks. These accessory muscles of breathing can get really, really tight and uncomfortable. And we also already live in a forward head posture where this area can already be affected. So belly, back body, out through the ribs and into the chest and collarbones. That is a 360-degree breath. We will practice it first laying down. But let's talk about posture real quick, which we will revisit all of this. But women, pregnant women, postpartum women, anyone in modern society probably has one of two postures unless they really take care of it and practice it. The first one is a big anterior pelvic tilt like this. So when we kind of hang forward on the ligaments on the front of our hips, our hip flexors, which cross the hip joint, obviously this area is getting shortened, so they can get short and tight. Our back muscles, so compare this to this, these get short and tight. Our hamstrings, which attach from our sitting bones all the way down past our knee, if we're in this posture, they get lengthened. And again, it's not a good type of lengthening. It's I'm constantly stretched out and ineffective lengthened, just like we talked about the front of our abs as well. Okay, this is dramatic and kind of overemphasized, but when we have this posture, we also have a lot of front rib flare, which takes away the effectiveness of our diaphragm over our pelvic floor. So like I said in the first class, our diaphragm and pelvic floor move together with the breath. If one of them is shifted off due to rib flare and that forward posture, you lose the pressure canister system and things just aren't as efficient. Then you have to use other muscles to stabilize, which makes them tighter and more stretched out anyways. So it's kind of just a cycle. okay? The other posture that we'll see is trying to counteract that by clenching our glutes and tucking our pelvis under, okay? So instead of, which we'll visit normal posture in a second, instead of normal posture, we overemphasize our glutes and our abs, although abs usually aren't that involved. And this can lead to a lot of pelvic floor tightness, especially in the back. It can lead to glute and hip external rotator. So all these muscles back here can get overworked and tight, okay? And we worked on breathing into the posterior pelvic floor in the last class, but this is our other option, and it can lead to rounding and low back pain because we are meant to have a natural little curve in the low back space. So when we take that out, it just kind of messes with our normal mechanics. So maybe let's all stand up and work on our posture. Pretend we are watching our kid at the park. You want to feel the weight in 3 corners of your feet. So the big toe mound, the pinky toe, and then back towards the heel. So shift around and see if you can notice if you kind of bias it one direction or another, okay? We also want a little lifting of the arch, so we don't want to collapse in and let our knees dive in. That was my knee, it pops. Okay, so from here, we're gonna stack our shoulders over our hips, and we want a slight, we're not clenching our abs, we're not gripping all the time. We need to learn to breathe into our bellies and our whole bodies, but we want a little bit of core engagement so that we're not dumping forward, okay? So just a gentle drawing of the hip bones and the ribs together. Shoulders back, a baby tuck of your chin backwards. You could also think about sliding your tongue on the roof of your mouth back to avoid this. So it doesn't need to be overemphasized chin tuck, but just a little bit. And let's see how that feels. So you can even take a video or a picture of yourself, see if your ribs are stacked nicely over your pelvis. And again, we have natural curves of the spine. So the neck curves in, and then the thoracic or upper back curves out a little bit, and then the lower back curves in. Everyone's curve is very different, but maybe if you take a picture, you can notice that. So practice finding a healthy posture multiple times in multiple postures on multiple surfaces, just to kind of get the hang of it, okay? All right, grab whatever ball you have, and we're gonna do a little bit of a lower back release. I'm gonna see if you can see me on this wall. Okay. So these are our paraspinal muscles that line either side of the spine. They're awesome, but they also tend to overwork and kind of take the place of smaller stabilizing muscles like your multifidi. So let's go ahead and release those. And like I said, they can get tight when we're in that anterior pelvic tilt posture world. Okay, so you're gonna come on just either side of your spine, place the ball against the wall, and you'll just roll up and down. Try to take some deep breaths as you do this. Then you can move it a few inches lower. And then you can move it a few inches higher. Maybe if you find one sticky spot, you can go in and out a little bit or hold steady pressure there and take 3 good breaths. Good. Let's go to the other side of your spine, whichever one you aren't doing before. And find the middle, roll up and down a bit. Good, place it up a few more inches. Doing little squats. And then place it down a few inches. Now find a sticky spot, roll in and out on it, and then hold steady for a couple breaths. Good, Good. Let's take about 30 more seconds to just explore whatever feels good for you. All right, hopefully you feel a little bit loosened up there. Pause the video, take more time if you need. We are going to move into some 90-90 breathing and then some hamstring activation at the wall. So find a wall, pull your mat up to it. Your feet might get your wall dirty. Hope that doesn't bother you. All right, so we're gonna start with just that simple breathing pattern. Your knees are gonna be bent at 90 degrees. Place your feet on the wall. And then notice kind of where your back lands here. If you do have low back pain, you might consider rolling up a towel roll and placing it underneath that curve of your low back. Maybe not that big, one less roll would be good. Just to kind of maintain that natural curve. Also, if you have that clenching and tucking pattern, you've already taken out that natural curve, so consider adding the towel roll in. Whereas most people are like this, so it's okay to kind of flatten the back down. All right, from here, if you need a towel roll underneath your neck, that's a good option too. Maybe close your eyes down, that can help with that mind-muscle connection. And we're gonna think about breathing 360 degrees. So as you take air in, imagine your lungs expanding like balloons, pushing out against the ribs, in through the belly and the back body, and finally into the upper chest. And a slow exhale out. So when we exhale out, imagine it's like you're hitting the brakes on your car. So you don't want to slam on the brakes. You want a slow, progressive exhale. So take a look at my low back. What we don't want when we breathe in is to actually feel the low back lift. This is bringing our pelvis into that tilt and flaring our ribs out. What you do want is to maybe feel your low back soften into the mat a little bit. I like to breathe in and out through my nose. Inhale into the lungs and let that pressure fill down into your belly, maybe all the way down into your pelvic floor and the back body and up into the chest. The back of the ribs, you might feel those, and then slow exhale out. I'm gonna stop talking because I want you to feel what it feels like in your body. Notice how this breathing pattern is taking you away from a hyped, overhyped sympathetic state to a more calm and relaxed parasympathetic state. It's good for your baby. It's good for healing postpartum. By taking these big breaths, we're getting a lot of good nutrient-rich oxygen into our bodies. Good. Now I want you to stretch your arms up. Palms are facing each other. And then take them back about 20 to 30 degrees. Think about reaching up and out through your pinky fingers. So we're activating a muscle called our serratus, which kind of lines our ribs here. If a guy is super ripped and has muscles on the side of his ribs, that's his serratus, or her. Now press out through your pinkies and take those same breaths. You might feel a little bit more kind of head to toe expansion of your spine here. You might feel more air going into the back of the ribs. Big breaths are in three main parts. We have our belly and our back body and the sides of our waists. We have through our lungs and ribs, and then we have through the chest. So think about those three different tiers each breath. Finish up whichever breath you're on. Relax a little bit, and then eventually find your towel roll or your yoga block. We are going to place this in between our inner thighs. I might use the yoga block actually. It's not quite big enough. You want it thick enough so that your hips are about hip width distance apart, so not too narrow. All right, so find that squeeze. From here, we're gonna work on activating our inner thighs, our adductors, and our pelvic floor, and our hamstrings without overusing our hip flexors, our paraspinal low back muscles, and our glutes. Okay, so take that big, good breath in. On an exhale, squeeze the block. Think about dragging your heels down, like sliding them down the wall. And a slight engagement of your core and pelvic floor. Now, as you do this, relax on the inhale. Exhale, squeeze the block, drag your heels down, slight engagement of the core and pelvic floor. Feel your thighs, feel your quads and your hip flexors. They should be squishy right now, okay? Feel around, squishy, squishy, not working. Good, inhale, relax. Let's do that again. Squeeze, slide down. Now I want you to feel your inner thighs. They should be firm. And the back of your hamstrings, if you have long enough arms, you should feel this muscle belly on the back of your thigh engaged. Good, inhale to relax. Exhale, squeeze, slide, and then draw your lower core in and your pelvic floor. You could even do a Kegel if you feel safe and if you have the ability to stretch and contract your pelvic floor. Feel free to add a Kegel on the exhale. Good, inhale, relax. Let your breath move its way all the way down into your pelvic floor. Exhale, squeeze, slide heels down, lower abs and pelvic floor engages. Now feel your glutes. They should be squishy, at least for this variation. Good, hamstrings are on, glutes are off, hip flexors are off, squishy. Good, inhale, relax. Let that breath move into the low back, feel the low back soften into the mat. Exhale, squeeze, slide heels down. Now feel your low back. Shouldn't be engaged, shouldn't be arched here. Good, take 3 more breaths without my cueing and see what you feel. Our inner thigh and our core and our pelvic floor are very interconnected. So that's why we're adding the block to get a little bit of that recruitment of the pelvic floor and core. Final breath here. Good. So being able to contract our hamstrings without overusing our glutes or our paraspinal or back muscles is going to be really, really healthy for our pelvis. So instead of being in this, so this is where the hamstring's attached, super forward tilted and lengthened position. We're going to learn how to bring this back into a good stacked position, and the hamstrings have a healthy ability to lengthen and contract instead of overly being lengthened. Often when people feel like they have tight hamstrings, it's actually because they are long and they have to over clench in order to stabilize, or they're weak and they have to over clench and keep constant tension in order to stabilize. So we want to be strong and mobile back there. Okay, go through everything one more round, I would recommend. And you can also start stacking these classes. So maybe doing the week 13 foundations class where we worked on breathing into the posterior pelvic floor and a couple other good things. All right, thank you for being here, and I'll see you next time.